You're listening to the Outsider Sisters podcast series. This podcast exists to amplify the voices and tell the experiences of women and non-binary persons of colour who grew up or migrated to the UK. Outsider Sisters gives you an uncomfortable snapshot into the everyday shared life experiences of many people of colour living on this small island. In this episode, I speak to Dami Fawehinmi, who is a photographer and cultural curator.
My name is Dami Fawehinmi. I'm 21 years old and I study at Newcastle University. I am a cultural curator and fashion and documentary photographer, and I own two businesses, so Journals of Dami and Visuals by JOD, which both are for creating multi-dimensional representation for minority groups, so Black people, LGBT community, focusing on things especially like colorism, and the whole aim is just to kind of let people exist in all types of identities, hobbies, all that kind of way, and basically saying we don't come in one type of way. And that's pretty much what my businesses are founded on.
Okay, and what's your heritage ethnic background?
So I'm of Nigerian heritage. Both my parents are Nigerian, and I was born and raised in England, specifically Southwark in southeast London. And then when I was 7, we moved to Essex, and then about a couple of years ago, I moved to Newcastle to start university.
Okay, and what are your experiences of growing up in the UK as a woman of colour?
It's been a lot. When I lived in Southwark, it was like the whole school was majority Black and Asian. So, and in the area I lived in, the flat that we lived in, it was, you always saw yourself, and you didn't know at that very young age, because I was like 7 and under, you didn't really know exactly what Black was, but you just saw people that looked like you. You saw African food shops, Asian shops, hair shops, and you just felt at home. And then my parents told me and my brother that we're moving to Essex, and it was this great big adventure. But when I got there and I started my first day of school, I was like, if I can remember, like one of 3 Black kids in our entire year, and there were barely any Black kids in the entire school. And I just remember sitting down and all the white girls were staring at me, and I think that was the first time when I just felt out of place. And as I got older in primary school, I kind of changed myself to become more palatable to the white girls around me. So I found my heritage at that age to be embarrassing, and I didn't want anything to do with it. It was more like being white and British and having straight hair was the way to be, and everything else apart from that was just not like good at all. And it wasn't until I started secondary school that school was a lot more diverse. It was in the same area, so over the few years Chapel 100 became a lot more diverse. So I met my friends there. I have an all Black girl friendship group, and we're all dark skinned and we're all Nigerian. So it was like finally being able to properly really, really accept who I was and how I looked. And as I got even older, it was like secondary school, 6th form, so it was very, very diverse. And then as I got to Newcastle, it was kind of like this revert back to primary school, because even though we had like a massive ACS community, and the ACS community is absolutely fantastic at my uni, like they make everyone feel really involved. I made a friendship group that are all Black in the LGBT society that we have. My friends are all POC, which was a miracle, because I was like, I think that year was the most POC people they had the year I started, so it was really easy to just kind of join in. But in the couple of years that I've been there, even though you have your friends, you have your chosen family and stuff like that, everything outside of it, you still felt like an outsider. And it was the first thing I noticed, people would stare at you like they haven't seen a Black person before. We had 2 racial incidents in my first year at uni. So my friends had eggs thrown at them from students at Northumbria, and they were saying the N-word at them, and the police didn't do anything. They just gave them I think they gave them a warning or something. And then the hockey society at my university, they were saying homophobic and racist slurs on video. And then the university blurred out all their faces. And when the video got published, they blurred out all their faces, and they said, oh, we're going to take them out of the season. So they weren't allowed to go to a hockey game. But we later found out that this out of season was during Christmas holidays anyway, so they wouldn't have been playing. So it was just constant microaggressions, racism, even in my classroom, of like we've talked about it now, and my film, because I study media, film and business, the classes are getting better, and we've had a discussion about the incident that happened. But it was like within my first month at university, they showed a video of lynching, and there was no trigger warning, and they didn't show any other documentaries by Black filmmakers. That was the only thing they saw. So for me, you know, I'm like hundreds of miles away from home. I'm in this whole new place, and I just didn't feel accepted. And it was like every time I'd come back home, I'd get off at King's Cross Station, and I'd just see so many Black people, and then you just felt back at home. And for me, that was like, why this can't be my entire experience for the rest of my life, constantly holding my breath, trying to, I guess, seem in a sense like safe to white people, like seem as if I'm not threatening. And then when I get home, I can be myself, even though there's nothing threatening about me. It's like, why do you see that? But I think the biggest thing that's definitely probably kept me sane is having my friends around me that look like me, or you know, are LGBT as well. So it's very much like you have these safe spaces as a Black woman. Definitely really important.
I've been in Newcastle for 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah, a long time. And when I came here to study, and when I came here, my tutor, who is Irish, he's white Irish, and he said to me, you know, he'd been here, I think he got here in the 80s, 90s, and he said to me, you will get racial abuse. And I was like, whatever, yeah, it's fine. And then like my first month, it happened, and I just couldn't believe it. Like I just could not. Like what? That had never happened to me. I mean, I'd heard people saying stuff, but not aimed at me. But it was the first time I'd ever had any over like abuse that I remember, and it broke me. Like I just started crying like straight away. It was like pure shock.
100%, because it's like not so much that you're shielded and that it doesn't happen down south, because it definitely happens down south. But it's like when it happens to your face and every day, it just is like. It's almost like it becomes a norm.
Oh, yeah.
And you kind of become desensitized to it, but at the same time, you're very aware of it.
Well, you're hyper aware more, which is even worse. You know, you're expecting it. You're always ready for it. You know, it's like being a woman, and you know, a guy walking, guys or whatever, or that constant threat. You're always in sort of fight mode. You're ready for it, which is a really exhausting way to be.
Exactly.
It's absolutely tiring, because you're, you know, apart from, I mean, I know you identify as non-binary, but you know, to look at you, you know, you are a woman in society. So, you know, you've got that, it's almost that ingrained fear that you have of being a woman. And then to add in colour and then sexuality on top of that.
It's so true. Like we were in Powerhouse in year 2, and there was like, it's just a lot of, especially fetishism as well. So you feel unsafe, and then you feel like, do people want to be with you just so they can kind of tick a box?
Has having a non-European surname ever been an issue? If so, can you explain and what this has made you feel?
No, so my surname is Fawehinmi, which is Yoruba, which is the tribe my family's from. And it's been, my friends and I were having this discussion a few years ago about, you know, there was a discussion on Twitter about how Black people would change their name and their surname so they'd get through the interview process. And then, you know, hopefully the goal would be that the boss would be so impressed with you that they'll give you the job, even though you changed your name, which is kind of illegal. But I could totally understand the premise of it, because there's so much discrimination that bosses would just see the name and think, I ain't hiring them. And it's like, my name is about as Nigerian as it gets. Like my full name is Oluwa Damilola, and then Fawehinmi. And it's like, you know, at the same time, I really want to stay connected to my heritage and my culture, and not have to change my name to get forward in life. But at the same time, it's that thing at the back of your head, like, because even though I'm self-employed now, when I was younger, I did apply for a lot of jobs. And when you get that rejection, you do have that thought at the back of your head that's like, do you think they rejected me because of my name or because of who I am? And, you kind of have to just think to yourself, like, okay, maybe I just wasn't suited for the job. Maybe that's not the reason, but it does play on your mind. And even like in school, teachers would never really make an effort to say my name. Or because even though Dami is my shortened name, which I even agree, it's easier to say than my full name every time. If you're having a conversation with me, my name came up like 10 times, but it's like, it's not so much, they just say it and it's like, what's the shortened version? And it's like, you feel like you're an inconvenience, and people will make fun of your surname, because my surname isn't even really that hard to say. I can understand my full name, but it's just, as soon you're just sitting there, just, maybe 14, 15 years old, and you're getting these microaggressions of teachers just not wanting to try. And they're like, have you got a different name? Like, can I call you Katie or something? And it's like, really? I just end up being like, I can call me Dami. Dami is what everyone calls me anyway, because I understand the name is long, but to just disregard my name like that, it's, there's so much history and culture, and a lot of me is essentially attached to that, and I'm important, so that people should make the effort to try and say my name. But yeah, no, I don't have a European name, so that's never really been an issue.
But I suppose it's been an issue. What I mean is an issue in terms of society has an issue with it, not you as such. I mean, the issue being, as you've said, people want to shorten it. They want to Europeanize it. That's not a word, but they want to make themselves feel comfortable, so they don't have to bother.
Yeah.
Whereas, I mean, my name, my name is Chantal Herbert. It's like the whitest European names you can get, like French names. So, but I have that expectation when I turn up, people don't understand why I'm not white. They're like, oh, especially when they hear my voice, they think, oh, right, yeah, she's going to be a white girl. And I've had people say to me, oh, I thought you'd be black, or you'd be white. I'm like, oh, right, okay, well,
yeah.
That's great. Well, colonizers made my name the way it is. So Herbert was not my family's choice. I'm sure it wasn't Herbert originally. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing people forget. It's like, that there's a reason
this was not my family's choice.
Yeah.
This is my slave name.
Exactly.
Yeah, or it was my name that was chosen to fit into, most likely it was my slave name, but some families came across and changed their surnames completely to fit in. So yeah, I don't know any of my heritage. I'm always really jealous of especially someone like you that knows their heritage and knows, what tribe they can trace themselves back to a tribe. It's like, you when you can't really do that, you feel like you've lost your whole sense of identity. Like I have no sense of, I don't know where my family come from. I don't know. We've traced our family history apparently, but I don't know what it is. But it's still that sense of almost like loss. Like I don't have a language. I look, how I look is not how I feel. Can you tell me more about your work and what you do?
Okay. If I start with Journals of Dami, because it makes more sense if I start with the main business. That kind of started when I was about 13, 14 years old, but it was under a different name. It was Daminella, which was what my auntie used to call me. So that name is very much gone now. But it was because majority of my family majority of them live in Nigeria, but my mum's side of the family, majority of them live in America, in Maryland and Texas. So we'd go to America every year to see the family, and in the months when I was in school, it was like my blog was a way for them to get in, like see what I was doing, school trips and stuff, because back when you're young, you just seem to go on a school trip every month, it felt like. So I just had this little blog, and then my friends at school saw it and they liked it. So it was just kind of nice to have this thing that people liked what I wrote and what I talked about and the little photos I took. And as I got older, it just kind of became this like more of a blog, in understanding what a blog was. But I still thought people who did blogs probably did it in like their free time, and then they had like, in quotations, a real job, because I'd always been raised to believe that, not necessarily by my parents, because my parents were very supportive of my brothers and mine's creative careers, but I mean wider society. It was very much that a real job was like a 9 to 5, and you can't be a blogger or creatives, because artists can't be a career. So, but it wasn't until about year 9 when I did a work placement at the Voice magazine or Voice newspaper in London, and you had all these adults that were writing news stories about, because the Voice newspaper is black owned, so they mostly write about Afro-Caribbean news stories. And I was just in absolute awe. I was like, these people, wake you up in the morning, get in their cars, and they're coming to write about black people, and it's an actual job. And for me, that was just life changing, because it's like, this is what I want to do. And that's when I started to take my blog like really seriously. So I actually interviewed Stephen Lawrence's father. It was the anniversary of when Stephen Lawrence had died, and his dad was setting up the foundation, and I was interviewing him for the newspaper. And it was just like, even though I think that was year 9, so I think I was like 14, but to me it was like, this is what I want to do. I want to work for black people. I want to create a world, or at least an environment, for black people to tell their stories. And I just go to blogging events, anything, networking, all that stuff. And when I was in 6th form, all those years, even when I was younger, photography had always been a hobby, but it never been also something I thought could be a career. So my blogging was doing quite well, but 6th form came first and A-levels came first. But not unfortunately now, because I can look back on it and be happy, but I missed out on getting into Newcastle the first time by 3 marks. And I remember they remarked it. I had 2 papers that needed to be remarked. The first remark came back, no change. And then that same summer that I got my A-level grades back, we were on the plane to go see my mum's family in America. And my teacher emailed me, I'm so sorry, but there's been no change. And I was just like, Newcastle's been my absolute dream to get into. And now my life just feels like it's not going the way it's supposed to. And I think I was still focusing on my blog because it was a nice distraction, but I felt very much like down about it because it was my media exam that I got a B in, and media was the subject that I'd always been really good at, and I put so much of my self-worth into the subject, being like, I'm not good at maths, I'm not good at science, so humanities is my thing, so hopefully I can get an A star in media. And when I got a B back, for me it was very much like as if, because I'm a Christian, it was almost as if like God or the universe was telling me I'm not good enough for this and I shouldn't be doing this. But then I think it was toward like at the end of September when we were about to come back to the UK, the university emailed me saying, because I was only 3 marks away and I got the other 2 grades that I needed, they said I could do a BTEC to make up for the grade I missed, as opposed to resitting. And if I'd resat my A-levels, I would have been 2 years behind, because they changed the whole A-level specification, which was so dumb, because before, if you messed up an exam, you could redo it a year later, but now you had to retake AS and A-level, so that's 2 years. But the university said, if you do this BTEC course, it's only going to last for a year. The BTEC course was in photography.
BTECs are amazing. And I love BTECs.
Pardon?
That's how I got into uni.
Oh my gosh, I honestly wish I'd done BTECs instead of A-levels. A-levels are absolute mindless stress, and BTECs just, I felt like not only am I learning, but I was being hands-on. I was able to be with my camera, and I met all these amazing people, and the teachers were so ingrained into it, and it was like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And actually having all that editing and all the photography, because before it was just a hobby, so I'd kind of just turn my camera to do something, and I'm like, oh, this does something. But now I'd realised like how to use it in manual and all that stuff, and it gave me the confidence to set up a business in photography. So once I did start in Newcastle about 2 years ago now, I'd work with the societies, do photography for them if they had events. And my blog kind of went on the back burner because I didn't realise how intense my degree was. So I had time for photography, but blogging and all that stuff, I didn't really. But it wasn't until like last summer, something happened to me, and it was like I started therapy and I just needed a healthy outlet for me, and that was I used my blogging and my photography together to kind of be like, okay, therapy is really, really helping me, but you can't just do therapy, you have to do so many other things. And for me that was like, okay, let's do a photography campaign for Black people, we're going to talk about black hair and black careers and hopefully inspire the next generation. Because I'm very much obsessed with that in a good way, but kind of being like, I grew up as a dark-skinned black person and I know what it feels like to be on the outside so much. So I don't want the next generation to be silenced at all. If there's anything I can do to help, even if it's a little thing. After that whole summer, for about a week of it, I went to Barcelona with my friends to kind of just clear my head. And I remember saying to myself, like, when I get back to Essex, I'm just going to go ham on all of this and just, you know, really speak about what I went through and help other people. And I think all the experiences I had was just kind of not so much to say, oh, because you got that B, you're not supposed to be in media. It was more to be like, you needed to do this course to then kind of like a domino effect, and you'd have the confidence to do this and do this. And since then, the businesses have just been like just insane. Like we had a NatWest campaign in November just gone. And I don't know who I'm saying we've, sorry. We've got 2 exhibitions and 1 competition that we're doing. Postponed because of COVID, but hopefully still happening either this year or next year. And now because of COVID, my business model for my photography kind of changed. So I started selling my artwork, and then people really liked it on shirts. So now we're raising money for Sister Space, which is a domestic violence center for Afro-Caribbean women. But it's just been like, these past few years have just been really wild from going from like hobby to career, and then hopefully once I graduate, like full time. But yeah, I think I can't really remember anything else. But yeah,
you're doing a lot.
Yeah, no, keeping busy is definitely the best thing for my mental health. So yeah.
And yeah, you talked about microaggressions before. Could you just tell me about some sort of just a few or 1 or 2 microaggressions that you faced, or actual experience of covert racism, particularly related to working in the sector that you work in?
Okay, yeah. So it would be things like, I remember when I was getting my personal statement checked, and I was basically writing about all the stuff that I wanted to achieve within my career, and the teacher was basically like, in a really sarcastic tone, like, oh, don't forget us when you get up there. And I think for me, it was just kind of like, why can't black people, black women, you know, shoot for the stars without someone, even if you meant it as a joke, it's still very much like, you know how much these people have to go through. And if they want to achieve something, have the faith in them.
Yeah. And
even in my career, like, because on Instagram, it's not really bad because you can post something, your followers are there, they follow you because they like you, they like what you post. So it's a bit more of a wholesome space. Like Instagram definitely has its cons, 100%. But in terms of like the way people respond, it's not as bad as it is on Twitter. And
or Facebook.
Exactly. Like people just, they can hide behind, you can make it a Twitter account so easily. And you'll just post something like, oh, Black Lives Matter, or, you know, you need to talk about colorism, and someone will just send something really horrible to you via DM, or they'll tag you in something, and it'll just kind of be like, it happened about a couple of years ago, and I used to argue with people on the internet over things that, you know, shouldn't be argued with. Like, you shouldn't debate someone's existence. You know, if I post something about the LGBT plus community or something about black people, someone shouldn't then go and debate like, do these people deserve rights? Do these people deserve the right to life? And for me, I would spend hours and hours arguing with these people, some of which were probably bots anyway, which was it was still a waste of my time, but it would affect my mental health so bad, because it'd just be like, why am I doing any of this if people don't think that I, you know, matter and stuff like that? So it would just be like, it would be really constant, like nearly every day, and just got to a point where I had to tell myself, like, I can't do this. I can't argue with people anymore. I'm not going to stop my job, but, you know, I can't argue with someone who's not going to educate themselves or anything like that. So it's gotten better now, but you do still, you just wake up and there'll be someone who will just respond something and, doubt your career or doubt that your existence matters. And it does get tiring, but that's what therapy's for, or talking to your friends is for.
What words have you had said to you before? If you mean, you don't have to say if you're uncomfortable doing that, but what words have you had said to you before?
So like the F slur, being called like a monkey, the N-word, that kind of stuff, because I have my profile picture as me. Like my friends used to find it funny that for like a whole year I'd have memes as my photo on Twitter, but it was so people didn't know what I looked like, so they couldn't say anything, essentially, because even though my confidence, like my self-confidence and how I look is a lot better, back then, when being dark skinned and stuff, there's so many things people can poke fun at that really affects you so much. So I'd just be like, I post a meme as my display picture so people can't really say anything. But yeah, I just got to a point, now I have my face as it, because it's like, if you're going to say anything, say it with your chest. But those kind of things.
Are there anything that you do that you've stopped yourself doing for fear? So, I was talking about like code switching. Are you aware of what it is? Because I didn't know what it was until recently. I learned this like a few months ago. I was like, what? I didn't even know I didn't know that it had a name. I was aware that people do things to change to fit the scene that they're in, but I didn't realize it had a name. Have you ever noticed yourself doing something like that? Or, I'll find that sometimes I'll do it, but I'm fearful of like eating bananas in public. And I know that's a stupid thing to say, but I fear being called a monkey, being looked at. Is there anything that you do or you've been aware of that you do to either make people feel comfortable or to make yourself feel comfortable?
Yeah, I think with me, especially, I'm more aware of it now than I was before. So if a typical uni day would be like a few hours of class and then I go for a society event or I go meet up with my friends at Coffee Trader kind of thing. But I'd realised my mouth really hurt after class. And, at first I thought, maybe it's just because I'm talking so much, and we'd have discussions, and because the classes, because I do media, film and business, is very interactive, but then you also have a lot of writing. So you'll be talking a lot and writing a lot. And I'd just be like, my mouth really hurts. And then when I meet up with my friends, it's like my voice completely changes. And I'd just be like, oh my gosh. And then you'd learn the word code switching. And it's like people will say that they can't understand what I'm saying. If I'm not my friends, but like people in class, they'll be like, I don't know what you're saying. So you just kind of change it. And also the fear of, I guess, going back to, I think what I said at the beginning of people feeling like people are afraid of you. Because if I've like right now, I've taken my box braids out. So I've got really, really short, kinky hair. Absolute 4C hair, and I'm wearing an oversized t-shirt and shorts. So I'd probably like go to Tesco's with my music on, and I've got a resting bitch face as well. So people might see me and think, oh my god, she looks terrifying, but I'm probably just listening to pop music and I can't be bothered to smile. So, but in class, it's like, I change the way I dress. Maybe I'd look in the mirror before I leave, and I'd be like, oh gosh, no, you look too this or too that, and make your voice sound a bit more eloquent and stuff, and enunciate and things like that. And then you just kind of go home feeling deflated, like you put a mask on all day. And I think that's what my whole first year was like. And then it wasn't until I got to second year when I had a bit more confidence, and I was very much like, I'm not here to make you feel comfortable. I'm here to be myself. And there is nothing scary about me. And Black people should be able to dress in any which way, and you not immediately just think the worst. And so now it's more like trying to catch myself if I'm like, okay, you're not talking the way you do, or wear that top, you love that top, don't worry about anyone else is going to say, kind of thing.
And as a queer non-binary person, have you found that these intersecting factors can be an issue in relation to being Black?
Yeah, I think. Do you mean like
an issue for, I guess, not for you, but for society? It has those intersecting factors. Because I'm a woman, but I'm a queer woman. but I spent a lot of my life dating men.
Yeah.
I have an 11-year-old child, but now I have a girlfriend. I had girlfriends in the past, but now I am outwardly, as I would say, gay, as opposed to bisexual at the moment. My girlfriend's white. But me being, I've always looked pretty butch, not butch, but boyish, I guess. And I've had short hair, and I found that when I started, I guess, dressing a bit more masculine. So after I split up with my kid's dad, I shaved my hair because I really wanted a shaved hair, like have shaved hair, like a hairstyle for years. And my ex was like, I'll dump you if you have short hair. Yeah. So, I had like a fade. I had like the hair through the middle.
Oh, yeah.
And then I found, I'd lost like loads of weight at one point, and I guess I was really muscly, but I found that then I started getting sexualized a lot by women, straight women. They would rub themselves all over me, task me, like I had someone ask me to take them home. So as then a sort of, I got told I looked like Grace Jones.
Oh, yeah.
As a black queer looking woman, at the time I was still dating men, I was then completely fetishized, and it added an extra layer to me, as opposed to just being, they touch my bum, be like, oh, your bum's amazing. But then I found that it would be women that did that. Straight white women would do that to me. So have you found that, the way you look, and I mean, you probably look queer to some people, as in gay, I mean, I've not seen what you look. I think you had a shaved head, the last picture I've seen of you.
Yeah.
Yes. But, you probably fit the criteria of looking gay or queer. So have you found that has an issue that intersects with your skin color?
Yeah, actually, I remember when the very, very first time I ever shaved my head. Actually, no, I'd shaved the sides before I shaved the whole head. And my dad, I remember he picked me up from the barbershop and was like, I don't want to tell you this, but you look like a lesbian. And I just remember, because I'm not out to him yet. I'm only out to my mum, my brother, my friends, and everyone but my dad. So I was just in my head like, oh, if only you knew. But it was like, and then I remember his mum, my grandma, came that same weekend, and she was like, oh, you look like an African warrior. And he was just sitting there agreeing. And I was like, you were saying that a few days ago. But it's like he's changed his, he doesn't say this anymore, but he said what makes a black woman beautiful is her long hair, or her hair, even just, an afro, not even just long, but just having hair, braids, anything like that. And for me, it was just kind of like, being non-binary and stuff like that, it's very much feeling this pressure to look the way people want you to, especially as a Nigerian woman, because it's like, I've only been to Nigeria once, and that was years ago. And I feel like if I went back now, it'd be like, what do I pack? Do I just pack a week full of dresses and stuff? Because if I went as I truly feel comfortable, I don't think that would be received well at all. Like at home, people would just accept it and they'll say things under their breath or whatever. But I know in Nigeria, it would be on steroids. So it's this kind of, because I do wear dresses if I want to, because I know what it feels like to be pressured to look a certain way. But 9 times out of 10, my idea of comfort is just like tracksuit bottoms and a top. And with my hair, it's like the sides are shaved, and then I've got the top as like this mini afro. So then I can do like ombre braids. I like having that blend of everything so I can feel comfortable in myself. But it's like you kind of, because I don't want to talk about the whole black community, but you do kind of feel like you have this pressure to just look a certain way to make them feel comfortable. And then when you're in the LGBT community, you have a certain way to make them feel comfortable, because it's like, even though I've got my POC friends in the society, it's still majority white. And there's still incidents that happen in the society that's very much like, racism and all that stuff. So no matter which way you turn, it's kind of like, you're too this, you're not enough this. And it's just like, when I dress up and come as myself, it's like, that should be what we focus on, and that should be a good thing, essentially. Yeah.
And what do you feel is the perceived aesthetics of a black woman, and how do you think we can deconstruct these perceptions?
I think because of my career is very much founded on accepting all types of appearances. So I don't want to go and say, oh, we need to demolish the way society has this one way of looking at a black woman, because there are black women that look like that, and you know, they were born that way, you know, like curvy figures and everything that, you know, our ancestors passed on to us essentially biologically, all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you know, we can't go and shame these women because they're black women and they're beautiful. And at the same time, it's like, it's more society's job to be like, we need to appreciate all types of black women no matter what way they come. And
what do you think, how do you think we're perceived though? What do you think that perceived aesthetic is? You know, for me, you when you see a perception of a black woman, you know, they're like that warrior looking. So
yeah,
you know how you were saying, or we've got big bums, that kind of thing. What do you feel is what is your perception of what the perceived aesthetic of a black woman is first?
Yeah, definitely, like, you know, big boobs, small waist, big bum, and she's very, very strong mentally in that sense, where she's, you know, the strong black woman trope. Nothing makes her scared. Big afro, long, probably loose curls kind of thing. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, we have this paint by number black person that not realizing that there are many types of black women, black men. Can you describe the feeling of being a black woman?
I think I would describe it as, gosh, no one's ever actually asked me this.
You've got time to think about it, don't worry. I can come back to that question if you like.
Yeah, yes, please. I think it's a really deep question. I'm not even sure, to be honest. Yeah.
So this was the question. I mean, this might not be relevant to you, but there are major disparities for BAME women in the healthcare system. We're significantly underrepresented in key biomedical research data sets. We've got risks to our health from discrimination, and black women are 5 times more likely to die in childbirth. Do you have any negative experience of healthcare industry that you feel or know is in relation to your ethnicity? But as I said, this might not be relevant to you.
Yeah. So when I saw this question, I was like, I got something to say about this.
Okay.
My brother, he was diagnosed with great transposition of the arteries, which is basically where your blood pumps the wrong way. He was actually born in Nigeria, and then they moved to England. I don't know why I was questioning that. I was like, yeah, no, they moved to England, and then they had me. And because he's dark skinned, he's a black boy, when he'd be running about on the playground, and then he'd be out of breath. And then eventually the teachers were like, oh, you should probably take Demi to the hospital. Something seems wrong with him. And had he been born white, they would have realized that his lips would have been blue, his skin would have been blue, but because he's dark skinned, his lips are quite dark, they never realized. And this surgery was very brand new, very experimental. Most of the kids that they found with it died. I think there was another child in the ward with him that had it and died. So I was really young. I think I was under the age of 1 at the time. And I just remember whenever my parents tell the story, it's like, it's very scary because, you know, you just sit in the waiting room and there'll be a parent with you, and the parent will be told to come with them, and you just know what happened, and you just be praying that, you know, please don't let it be my son. But he ended up being okay. He's 25 now, has absolutely nothing wrong with him. You'd never know he had it. But it was like, you know, the medical profession definitely has a massive responsibility to be able to see these warning signs, because they don't know how he was able to survive to the age of 4, because most times they realize this is with newborns. So it's an absolute miracle. But, you know, even with skin conditions or people, just anything, a condition that a black person has that they can't recognize because all the medical books are written for white people. So many people didn't need to die because of it's as simple as taking the photos and doing the research, but they can't be bothered, or they don't have the funding to do it, and then it's someone else's responsibility to fund that. But it still comes down to that, is why is no one doing that? And that's because they simply don't care. And
no, they don't.
In our case, we're extremely fortunate because there were so many hurdles, like him being born in Nigeria and then moving here and then realizing him being dark skinned and black. There's so many things, so many factors that should have been the reason why he died, but it's not. but still it's like, you know, that should have definitely been recognized earlier. And then for me, I've got a blood condition, so I think it was about 2015 when they realized. And I'd always be feeling like, I don't know why, but I'd go to the doctors a lot as a child. And it was just kind of this, I was a very, very, very energetic child, but it wasn't until I got into my teens that I started to notice I was a lot more tired. And then they realized I had anemia, which is very common in the Black community. But I was on the severe end, so like passing out, extremely heavy periods, heart issues and stuff like that. And they just prescribed me iron tablets, and I've been on them now for about 5 years and they've done nothing. So it was like, I've just recently had a blood test a few days ago because I'm supposed to get one every 3 months. And I can't tell you how many times I've been to the doctors, almost crying, just being like, I feel like there's something else, because it doesn't make sense. Because I know people with anemia and they feel tired, they might pass out, but the extent to which I have it, it's like I would sometimes have to miss class because I physically can't get out of bed. I can't do my work, that kind of thing. And it's when my career is so hectic, or just even want to go see your friends and you can't because you're tired, and then you feel like you're letting them down. It's just, this doesn't sound like a life of a healthy 21-year-old. So to me, it was like, I feel like there's something wrong with me. So because they knew I had heavy periods, they were like, okay, we're going to give you this pill. Hopefully it'll stop your periods, and then that should stop everything else. But I ended up prolonging my period from 5 days to 14. And I've never felt like, the way I felt then was just utterly terrible. And now it's just gone to the point where, you know, thinking about going private and just, you know, can you guys just do some different type of tests, tell me if it's something else, maybe I think it was endometriosis that it's called, get tested for that as well, because I heard the wait list for that is unbelievable. I remember I got into this argument with a white boy at my school, and he loved to play devil's advocate. And I remember, because we did media studies together, media would have a lot of debate, so it kind of be me versus him. And it just got to a point where I'm like, why are you doing this? And then he got a Twitter account, and we'd be arguing on there. And I remember there was this, it was when I was at uni actually. And, you know, somehow the conversation, it was talking about, the university used to do this blind date thing in the newspaper. So they pair two people together, they go on a date, and then they talk about it in the newspaper. And the girl was with a guy who wanted a traditionalist wife. A lot of the things that he said was very sexist, and she was like a feminist. So in the article that had been written, she basically said that it got to a point where I had to pretend to go into someone's house just so I could get away from him. And I remember posting it and being like, this is what women have to go through just to get away from a guy who makes them feel uncomfortable. And it's like, there's so many levels to it, to having to get your friend to call you and say there's an emergency, having to leave just because you feel unsafe. And it's like, we shouldn't have to do that. Someone should just be able to respect the boundaries of knowing when something they're saying isn't okay. And I was basically talking about that, and he was just like, oh, a guy should be able to say whatever they want to say, and it's not that bad. And then I don't know how, but the conversation somehow got onto race. This was like 2 years ago. And yeah, it got to a point where he was just like, well, I can't learn if you don't teach me. And I'm like, but did you not just, he went to my secondary school as well. So at that point, it'd been 7 years. And I'm like, we spent 7 years in school where you were being educated by teachers about other stuff, but when it's time for you to do a bit of education about race, it's suddenly my responsibility. And it just made me feel like really crummy, because for a while, it's like, oh my gosh, is it my responsibility to go and, you know, tell him, oh, this is why racism is bad, that kind of thing. But then I was just like, no, Google was free. And it's just
books. You can go to the library, learn for free.
Books, documentaries, film, everything.
Yeah, YouTube's free. Go on there and watch some documentaries.
Exactly. Like, nearly everyone has a phone these days, or at least if you don't, the library, anything. Yeah. And it's just, you know.
Well, that sort of brings me on to my question of, like, what are your thoughts about patriarchy and how this affects women of colour?
I think it's just there's so many levels to it, and it really benefits nobody but men themselves. And it's like, you know, when I was younger and I didn't know what the word, I'd never heard of the word patriarchy, but I knew what it felt like to be a victim of it. And it was like, you know, during Christmas time, your place was to be in the kitchen with the aunties while the men were in the living room, and you get them a drink or you give them a bowl of water so they can wash their hands before they have eba or anything like that. And it's just, it would just continue. Like now it's just people or men even, or anyone who benefits from using patriarchy for themselves against other people. It's very much this, you know, changing the world to, it's just, yeah, changing the world so that there's more victims, essentially. So having people who don't, like, what was something that happened? I remember they were making new laws about abortion, and it was all men. And it's like, people who have wombs should be the people who make the decision about this, not guys.
All white men at that as well.
Exactly. So it's just so many levels to it, because women, yeah, we are the victims of patriarchy, and then you have black women who then become the victims of, I guess you could say, like, you know, white feminists, the racist form of it. They then come on us, they weaponize their tears, and then you got white men who are abusing patriarchy and their race, and it's just very much like, it's so exhausting, because it's just, you know, even though I'm non-binary, I know how I look and I know how I come across, and the conversations and the spaces that I'm in, and it's just the things the men would just say, and it's just like, this just doesn't feel right. Like, that's why I'm so grateful to have spaces where, you know, people are just, you know, educating themselves and being inclusive and kind to each other. And then you walk out the door of your friend's house and then everyone's just everything. But yeah, no, definitely not a fan of it. Yeah.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Do you feel that you're ever racially profiled?
Yeah. Gosh, it feels like everything's just been happening these past few days. My doctor's appointment, and then I went to go get some hair dye, I think 2 days ago, and the shop clerk was following me about, and it's just like, I'm not gonna steal anything because I just want to get the dye and leave. But you just feel, and they'd be doing stuff that just didn't seem real. Like he'd get a bottle, he'd read the bottle, he'd put the bottle back, and then he'd get another bottle, and then he'd look at me, and I'm just like, what do you really think I'm gonna? Because I can't run, so you'd probably be able to chase me down if I was gonna steal something. But not even in the hair shops. It's like my local Tesco's. My brother, about a year ago, he went in there, came back from the gym. It was pretty cold, so he had a hoodie on and everything. And we've lived in Essex now for about a decade, and that Tesco's been there even before we moved there. And he was just in the aisles, and then they had this tannoy that said, you know, if you steal anything, we will report you to the police. And in the decade that we've lived there, that's never happened. And I just remember him coming home and telling my parents, and we're like, what the actual hell? That has never happened to anyone. We've never heard that, ever. And it's just like, people they just see you and they just assume the worst. And it's like, even if you were going to steal something, that's not great, you know, theft isn't good. But it still comes down to that, making people feel like you're trying to put them in their place and make them feel like they're less important, and kind of put them into a box and be like, you look like this, therefore you are going to steal, therefore we have to put these procedures in place. But you don't even know this person, you know? Yeah. It sounds weird, but do you ever keep your receipts when you're leaving, just in case?
All the time.
Stop you?
And when I chuck them away when I leave, I'm really scared that they're going to stop me.
Yeah. No, I keep it all the way till I get home. Like my filing is just, because my mum does it, and then I started doing it, so I'd have like different envelopes for every month, and then put them all into a year. And it's just that thought at the back of the head, like, they're just going to stop you and be like, can I see that you bought that? And then they just take the entire receipt, and it's just like, I'm just going to keep it. I was actually listening to a podcast this morning, and they're talking about, I think, is it Perry Edwards?
Oh, yes, of course.
Yeah, she's got a documentary coming out, or came out, I can't remember, but there was a lot of discussion about it on Twitter, and it was very much this. You'd have black men that wouldn't be protecting dark-skinned black women. So you'd have dark-skinned black women say, oh, I was bullied for being too dark. And then you'd have some black man or a light-skinned black woman come in and say, you know, oh, stop trying to silence us, or stop trying to silence them. You know, you guys are, again, this whole femininity thing, making us feel like we're not, you know, women enough, or however we identify. And then it's almost like, if you're light-skinned, then you're feminine. If you're dark-skinned, you're a man, kind of thing. And it's like, you know, why is no one protecting us but ourselves?
You've got even celebrities like Stormzy and stuff, like laughing about comparing like black women to apes, like dark-skinned women.
Yeah. That's the thing, like, they will apologize and everything, but you apologize and then you move on and you get on with your life. But that's still us who has to kind of internalize that and kind of have these almost traumatic flashbacks to things that happened at school. So I'd have so many colorist experiences. So like when I was younger, I had these box braids that looked like locks. And they're quite thick. And there was another boy in my school who had locks, and people would say I looked like him. And you know, I remember in primary school we were learning to do, I can't remember, it was like some really old dance from like the 1920s. And because my teacher said you look more like a boy, so we're gonna let Emily lead. And Emily was a light-skinned black girl, and she was like, you know, she had the really loose curls and she looked more feminine. And to me that was just like, because back then I was a girly girl, like I wore dresses all the time. Pink was my favorite color. You wouldn't catch me in jeans ever. So that, for me, I was like 8 at the time, and it was just like, what
makes me look boyish? You know, at that time. What is it? What, my dark skin?
I had pigtails. Exactly, I had pigtails. Not saying that femininity has to look in one way, but I guess society's idea of femininity, I was embodying that, and that still felt like you're just telling a little black girl that she looks like a boy, and that's not great. So, wow. For me, it was just like, as you get older and then you see these celebrities having their old tweets be brought up, and yeah, you can apologize and you can move on with your life, but it's the dark-skinned black women that have to go through that and have to see that, and we're the ones who actually mentally have to process that, not you. You just said it, you thought it's a joke, but it's not at all.
And why do you think like that? In my school, my nickname, I used to have little braids, and then one boy decided that I looked like Coolio, and that was my nickname through school. Coolio.
Wow.
Like, so yeah, I look like a middle-aged black man because of a hairstyle.
It's just, exactly.
They're just, they don't get it.
It's just, I don't even understand, because it's literally just a joke to them. That's it. And it's like, you laugh along with them, because if you don't laugh, you're going to cry. And it's then they'll just be like, oh, stop laughing, stop crying, it's just a joke. And then you just feel invalidated. But when you get older, you start to realise, like, that wasn't okay.
Do you think it's impacted your mental health?
Oh, definitely. Like, the way I used to look in the mirror, all the African, even today they still do, the African and Asian hair shops, they would sell bleaching creams. And I remember there was a really popular one in my area, and she had like this bleaching cream that was like £5, and I had £5. And I remember looking at it, and the first thought in my head was like, if I use this, I'm going to be pretty. And I just remember in year 9, my confidence was just in the trash. Like, it couldn't get any lower than that. And I'd hate the way I looked. Whenever I post on Instagram, I'd always like increase the brightness all the way to the top, or Snapchat filters, anything to make me not look like the way I did. And it wasn't until my best mate came towards the end of year 9. She's also dark skinned, because I was the darkest of the friendship group, but she's a little bit darker than me. So it's kind of like us two together. And even though all my friends in the group are brown and dark skinned, it was like we were still on the very much end of the spectrum. So I remember she'd send me stuff on Instagram of dark-skinned women being praised, or pages devoted just for dark-skinned women. And I just started to look like, because on YouTube, people would make like parodies. So they'd get black men put them in wigs, and then they'd have like a light-skinned woman as herself, and the dark-skinned black man / woman friend, and the dark-skinned black woman / friend would be the undesirable one. She's really loud and just physically and everything she'd do just seemed undesirable. But then the light-skinned friend would be very feminine and everyone would want her. And we'd watch those videos and we'd find it funny. But as you get older, you start to realize this isn't funny because this is supposed to be me. And having that contrast to what my friend was sending me, it was just so refreshing because it was just these pages of so many dark-skinned women, all different types of sizes, looks, everything. And people in the comments would just be like, oh, you're so beautiful. And I'm like, I've never seen or heard any of this before. And, I went away on a summer camp with my friends and my confidence just like, that was the summer I actually came out as well. So that summer was just like very freeing and I felt so much more confident. I started sixth form and I also during sixth form I had short hair. So it was very much like going against every boundary society has set for me from every single direction and just being whatever I wanted it to be. It's like I'm not going to lighten my skin tone to make anyone happy. And, whoever I date or become friends with, if they've got a problem with how I look, then you're not supposed to be in my life. And that was a very hard lesson to learn because I felt like it was my responsibility to make other people feel comfortable. But then I realized, like, you're not asking for too much to ask people to treat you with respect. And for me, that was, like, mind-blowing. But, now it's like I still do have days where, I do feel a bit undesirable or I'd be like, oh, I wish... Not with colorism and stuff, I don't wish I was light-skinned anymore. Like, I've definitely healed that part of me. It's more to do with being black in the LGBT community because it's like people will definitely fetishize you. And I've been in like an abusive relationship where that happened a lot. And it's just like now you just have this constant thought in the back of my head, like if I date outside my race, is this person honestly liking me for me or because of how I look like? And that definitely does play on your mind because it's like I've kind of put dating on the back burner now so I can like focus on myself and therapy and stuff like that because the last relationship I was in like ended really badly, like restraining orders and stuff like that. And it was because my experience because she was white and racism and stuff like that, I never thought that racism and abuse could come from someone I was dating. I always thought it'd be a stranger. So I never really saw the warning signs. I'd ignore it. And it wasn't until like it ended and stuff like that, I was very much like, I need to take some time away from all of that so I can see what I want in a person, be more cautious and look after myself as well.
Were you fetishized in the relationship?
So were you
fetishized by her?
Yeah, a lot. Like it'd be stuff like she'd want to see me with really like a wig and curly hair. There was this one time we were driving and she asked me, we were talking about, other black people that call white people the N-word, like my N-word kind of thing, like a friendship thing. And she was like, why don't you do that? And I'm like, I'm not going to call you that. Because she was just, the whole black culture, she was very focused on. And it just, like, she was so focused on it. And we were supposed to go on a trip. And I think we were supposed to go to LA because she wanted to do something in rap. Like, as I look back on it now, I can't help but laugh. But at the time, it was like, that was what was going on. And when I got home last summer, just gone, I was like telling my friends and family about it. And they're like, this was an abusive relationship. You need help and kind of thing. And that's when I told her, like, I ain't going with you. And, she even got even more abusive. And it was just telling her that I wasn't going on the trip. And it was just very much looking at how she views black people, because it was just kind of this, like, you're indisposable, I can talk to you, I can treat you any way that I want to. And it was like me having to remind myself, like, nobody should be able to call you these names or treat you this way. But yeah, it was pardon?
It's disgusting.
Absolutely disgusting. Like, I was like in the beginning stage of the therapy. It just took so much for me to unlearn that I didn't, like, no one deserves to go through that. And it's one layer of being in a relationship and it being abusive, and then it's another layer of it being the power dynamic and the racist dynamic of it all. But yeah, I think the thing that angered her the most was that she didn't get the flight ticket money back, because she was supposed, I don't know why, she was just like, she said I should pay her the money back for her ticket, even though I paid for my ticket, she paid for her ticket, and she just somehow had it in her head that I should pay her back. And I was like, okay, well, you're clearly losing it right now, so I'm just gonna block and trying to get on with my life. And yeah, that just didn't happen. It was just very much this like cat and dog chase for the whole better part of a year. Like you on TV especially, you'd see white women being abused in TV shows, but you'd never see it happen to black women because of this whole strong black woman trope. So if the man wasn't treating her right, she'd just be like, I'm leaving, and that was it. And I didn't feel like I could do that because I wasn't confident enough to do that. So it wasn't until like I think July just gone, I was able to get a restraining order because it was still going on to that. But it was very much just like, why can't you respect a black woman's boundaries, or respect a woman or anyone else for that matter, to understand when they say no? But yeah, for me that was very much like, in terms of the whole dynamic of a relationship, is how do you navigate that as a black person and safely,
especially a young black person.
Yeah,
how do you navigate that?
Exactly.
It definitely comes at the moment, it comes with age more so. You learn boundaries and you learn how to say no and that things are okay as you get older.
Yeah.
Because you get more confidence and you learn more. I think younger people now, you have much more access to things that I didn't even have access to.
Yeah.
You have access to the internet, you have access to things like Instagram. It's kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you've got a lot more negative mental health things coming at you.
Yeah.
But you also have the ability to educate yourself.
Exactly.
Much more so. I never would have been this awoken like you are at your age. What are you, like 23, 24?
21.
21, that's it, 21, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I would never have even had the emotional intelligence to understand what you're talking to me about now.
Yeah.
But that comes through you being able to educate yourself from a very young age. Even having things like Instagram and seeing positive black role models and being able to send that. We never had that. It was, but then we also didn't have the possibility of lightening our skin on an app. So yeah, it's like, which is worse, being able to educate yourself or being able to live in this social media world where you are bombarded with all of these negative images?
Yeah, exactly.
It's a real hard one. It plays a lot of havoc with your mental health.
Exactly.
My mental health definitely has gotten worse since things like social media exist.
Oh no, 100%, because it's just this round of, it's not, a lot of positive can come from it, but there is a lot of negativity ingrained in it. There's constant having to show yourself and put yourself out there, and it's like, it's nice because you can, because I've made a lot of friends, like, funny enough, I was raised on Stranger Danger, but I've made a lot of friends online. And it can be that beautiful space for you to meet people who are just like you, but on the flip side of that, it can also be a very bad place. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the third episode of the Outsider Sisters podcast. Much thanks to Dami Fawehinmi for her important and thought-provoking words. And for more information about Dami and this series, please refer to the podcast show notes. Until the next time, thank you for listening to Outsider Sisters, hosted by Chantal Herbert.